run by Southern Sounds ASMR, and it seems like she is the kind of creator of the concept. I actually just watched a bunch of those videos of hers this week, and semi-recently Soft ASMR did this kind of video. I've seen Grace V do this kind of video, and a few other people. Rage ASMR has done it as well. So I thought I would do it for you because I've been enjoying them lately, and typically I like to make the kinds of videos I like to watch. So we are doing it lo-fi tonight, and that's in part because lately here I feel like I have no choice but to do lo-fi, even though your girl loves lo-fi. I love lo-fi. I love lo-fi. Love, 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 love it. But hopefully we'll have some more variety available to us shortly. In the meantime, here we are with our little buzz who probably needs a name. One more thing before we get started is I was given these by Happiness Boutique, and I have to say, I'm really just so impressed with them. I think they're gorgeous. The packaging was cute. The quality truly seems great. And then these twisted rope hoops. And this is I think it's called the twisted rope chain. I got another pair of earrings too that has a double hoop, which you will see shortly, I'm sure, in another video. If you're interested, there will be more info. Alright, let us get started. This makes great sounds anyway. Here's the thing. I have a neighborhood. I do. I live somewhere. I live here. And there are some little things about my neighborhood that I could tell you, but there aren't really terribly interesting things. There aren't really big stories or little stories even to tell. What I can say about my neighborhood is that I do live in a building with a woman who was, back in the day was like a very big Austrian pop star. When I found that out, I looked her up, and it's true. It's not like, she was telling it to me to seem cool or something, which is a very specific way to try to seem cool, but she wasn't, and that just confirmed to him that she was the best woman he had ever seen. So, you know, he kept trying to like sidle up to her and flirt with her and stuff, but she wasn't having it. She was like, you're high, I'm not interested, kind of thing. But he kept pursuing her, and she did not want to be pursued that night. Like, she was very adamant that she was not interested. He wasn't creepy, it didn't sound like, but she was just like, you're silly, go away. He did succeed, however, in getting her number, so then he called her and asked her out, and they went out and they had a good time, and they fell in love, basically, and they're still together 5 years later. They live together, they have a dog and all that, but it's kind of funny, because we just had that conversation outside while he was walking his dog, and it was nice, because they had recently moved in, so he felt too like he hadn't talked to really anyone in the building. I hadn't really talked to many people in the building. And he was like, oh, you're like the one I know best now. And he was like, you must think I'm so weird that I met my girlfriend when I was high. And I was like, no, I actually think it's like a really lovely story. Like, you know, it's an uncommon way to meet, but, you know, maybe there really is something to you seeing her essence or something like that, you know, whatever. I think it's a beautiful first step kind of thing. And he was like, oh, thanks, you know, like some people think it's really weird, and I was like, no, I think it's great. So really, they're the only two that I know, and then everyone else I don't really know. They all seem fine. I have no tension with anyone, and no like good connection with anyone either, which is not how I would prefer it. I would like to get to know people, but again, the building kind of sets a vibe for itself where you either do or don't talk and get chummy, I guess, as a rule. So that's that. And then there's my roommate, and I know plenty about him, but I don't do much about him, you know, it's not even gossip, it just would be, you know, too much. So, you know, like airing someone's dirty laundry, I'm not gonna do that. So what I was thinking is that there's this other neighborhood I know very, very well, because the person I'm seeing lives there, and we actually found out some interesting information just this week about a few things that I think are perfect for this kind of video. So I'm going to talk about that. The person I'm seeing lives on a hill, and it's a very steep one. Like, walking up to their place, it's like the equivalent in rise of altitude or whatever, it's the equivalent of 8 stories. So imagine living in an 8-story walk-up, but it's not an 8-story walk-up because all these stairs are outside, and there's no other way to go. It's just a walking street. So the community is really tight-knit, like they're not all chummy either. There's a lot of really strange personalities up there, actually, but just by necessity, you're always passing each other's houses. There's only this one way to enter. It's a difficult place to live because there's all these stairs. So, you know, if you were to get injured, like say you were on crutches or something, I honestly don't know what you would do about it. So it's a very particular kind of neighborhood. And it's very beautiful too. It's not like ritzy. As you'll hear, there are some places that are kind of like iffy, but it is beautiful. There are a lot of plants and things like that. So one of these, I'm gonna like work up to more serious stuff, I think. One of these places on this hill is rented out as an Airbnb, and during the year of the pandemic, which is more than a year, but you know what I mean, like the bulk of the year, this couple lived there with their dog, Patrick, and, you know, and we don't really know them because they're just renters, so even though they were renting there for the whole year of the pandemic, you know, run into them, say hi and stuff, but we don't know them. Anyway, they eventually left, and this other girl moved So because his dog is such like a big dog, it's not mean, but it's like a dog. And the pathway up is pretty narrow. So the guy with the dog and the new renter girl were talking, and we had to kind of wait off to the side before we could pass them to go up because it's very narrow. So we heard more of their conversation than we might have normally, and don't know either of them super well, don't know her at all to like interject, so we just kind of overheard a few things. But basically it sounded like she was worried because like there is this young, kind of wormy looking guy. That's not her word, that's my word, because we think we know who it is, kind of this young, like scrawny but like scary guy hanging around her house, the house she's renting, or the apartment or whatever. And there's a ground floor window on it, this big, the whole thing's ground floor, this big square window that she leaves open, and she had kind of noticed him like lurking around and like hanging around and kind of looking through the window, and she was disturbed by it. So if she's that freaked out, there's probably something there, right? Anyway, so the guy with the dog is like, let me give you my number. He's dating, he has this interesting it's complicated relationship with a woman on the hill, and they live together in the house with the dog that barks from above. So it's not like he was hitting on her. He goes, let me give you my number, and I'm always walking the dog even late, and so if you feel uncomfortable, just let me know. His place is like 20 feet to her place, maybe a little more than that, but it's so close. So he's like, if you feel uncomfortable, call me or text me and I'll come. Me and my big dog, and the guy himself is quite like big. I'll come down and like scare the guy off. So she's like, thanks, and she takes his number. And their conversation ended. They kind of like go their separate ways, and then we keep going up the stairs, and that was the end of that. Wasn't our conversation. But today, going up the hill, we noticed outside of her place, like if she were renting it with a guy, she probably would have had a different conversation about the wormy guy. If she were not staying there alone, if she were renting it with like her girlfriends, family, whatever, she probably wouldn't have felt as scared as she did. Right? So we're walking up today, and there's a guy sitting outside of her place. It's not the wormy guy, it's like this big, bulky guy. Never seen him before. Dressed in all black, watching a movie on an iPad. And he just kind of looked up, and then he looked back down as we passed. But basically, my guess is he seems to be a bodyguard of sorts. But it's really not overkill because she feels unsafe. It is something that requires more resources, right? Though, to pay someone to come to make sure you're safe. So that's the only thing, is that it seems like a big solution. But again, if she feels unsafe, an appropriate one. And I don't think it's that weird either, because if the lurker, kind of peeping Tom-esque person is this wormy guy we think it is, he lives in this house by hers. It's like the wormy guy house, the girl who's renting, and the guy with the dog, their houses make a triangle. So that's a little triangle. And his house is quite creepy, like it's in a state of disrepair. Like 8 or 10 people live there, and it's not big enough for that many people. It's way too small for that many people. It's a pigsty, and actually we know that because it was recently posted for sale. So there were some pictures of it up. It's a total mess. It's like a sty. It's terrible. Honestly, it's objectively disgusting. It just is, and I think they just wanted to see if they could get some money from it. And they took it off because no one wanted to buy it. It's falling apart. It's falling apart. it's a Monday, I don't know how to time things so that people are less loud. I live on a busy road. Here we are, lo-fi forever. So we're just gonna keep going. But basically the house, yeah, total mess. Too many people live there, and people are always coming and going from there too. I mean, basically it appears that people are into like illicit behavior there. And on the outside gate as well, the gate is not fully on its hinges, it's kind of falling off. It doesn't look functional, and I've actually never seen anyone come through it. But there's like a decoration, like a really faded decoration. I don't know if it's a scarecrow or a soldier, like a tin soldier from Christmas or something, but it looks like a piece of trash. Actually, it's so faded and weather worn. And there's also this like weird stained glass thing. It just looks a mess. But the most interesting part about all of this is that where the person I'm seeing lives, right by him, there's this guy named Kevin. Kevin's like a fine guy. He's a nice guy, actually. He's definitely interesting. He has like these antlers in front of his house, and every once in a while he'll exhibit some weird behavior. And it's weird because it's only every once in a while. Like one time on a Monday at, God, probably like 7 a.m., he was blasting techno from his house, and it woke me up. But just that once, and it wasn't a party, he was alone. Or he'll take it upon himself to cut the trees on the pathway that are not on his property, so that he can have a better view, or it can look better for him, but it's not on his property. And also it like removes coverage that other people want around their gates and like their gardens and stuff. It just like, it'll just remove it all without asking them, and that can be kind of annoying, or like a small point of contention. And they've talked to him about it before, but he just kind of like forgets that they've talked about it, that they don't want that, and he does it again the next year. Anyway, oh, and he bought his place a long time ago. I don't know how big it is now, like 1,600 square feet or something, but it's still a one bedroom. He built it out himself, and so the layout is quite strange, and it's a big enough place that maybe it should have more than one bedroom for resale. But this is the thing, he's quirky enough. I don't think Kevin is very concerned about resale value. So he's a good guy though, and he'll tell you anything. So we found out that that creepy house where the wormy guy lives, turns out it's owned by this woman. We'll call her Lila. None of Kevin is not really Kevin either, but we'll call this woman Lila. So Kevin says, oh, well, that house is owned by this woman named Lila. She inherited it from the man who lived there before. When Kevin first moved there, the man was there. He was ailing at the time, and Lila was his nurse. So when he died, she inherited his home and everything. And you're like, okay, that's a little fishy. She was his nurse. She was in charge of his health. And when he died, she inherited everything. But then you think, well, maybe he didn't have family. Maybe they really did make a good connection, while she was by his bedside, caring for him as his paid-for nurse. People really do find those relationships meaningful, and maybe he didn't have a more meaningful relationship in his life, so that makes sense. But then, come to find out, another family has a lawsuit out against Lila for doing the same thing. Essentially, she was caring for one of their family members who died, and that person left everything in their will to Lila, not the family. So there's another record of the exact same case happening, where she was the nurse for someone who died and left her everything, not once, but at least twice, maybe more. And that's fishy as hell to me, and really spooky. too many people there. And they're up to sketchy stuff, basically. And it's the only house like that up there, but whatever. I thought that was interesting and scary. And then the last thing we found out talking to Kevin, so at the base of the hill, so everyone has to walk past her. There's this woman, we'll call her Erica. Erica is pretty cool, actually. She's like, I don't know, in her 60s, early 60s. She's kind of like this punk artist, lesbian, like hardcore, kind of like salty woman kind of thing. Honestly, in some ways she reminds me of Fran Lebowitz, but not totally. Anyway, but she gets along with us, like we get along with her. She thinks we're fine. Sometimes she's really chatty, sometimes she like clearly doesn't want to talk, and yeah, you just kind of have to like read her and move on or not, depending on what she's in the mood for that day. Because I guess it would be fine, but you don't really want to get on her bad side is kind of the feeling. And you have to pass her every time you go home. She's like at the front, and so you're always passing her. So it's just better to be friendly, right? I mean, it's always better to be friendly, but so because Erica is at the base of the hill, there are garages at the very base, and then she's like the first one up. So I guess she built a fence around her backyard that extends over the tops of the garages and just called it her backyard, even though it's not her property. And Kevin does some really intense work that requires a lot of expensive equipment, so he keeps a lot of that in his garage. And I think it wasn't clear. I'm not clear. He's not clear. We don't know. But it seemed like maybe his concern was that building the fence, and like I don't think she put more ground, like soil, on top of the garages, but maybe she did. Anyway, I think his concern was like, that's not her property. I don't want her doing stuff on the land above the garages, because if it affects his equipment in his garage or his car in his garage, right, that's expensive too. That's trouble. So she wouldn't change it, so he sued her. And she did not like that. I don't know what the outcome of that was. This is a few years ago, I guess, but we just found out about it. She did not like that. I don't know what the outcome of it was, but we found out from him that after he sued her for extending her backyard past her property line, she sued him for defamation. It's not like she's famous or anything, like defamation, because she said he bad-mouthed her to the neighbors, and bad-mouthing her to the neighbors, of which there are very few, honestly, is like defamation. So she sued him for like 6-digit figure, saying because of his lawsuit she had to go to therapy. It caused her a lot of undue stress, and yeah, it's all under defamation apparently, because he badmouthed her to their neighbors, which I thought was pretty silly.